is time. It is time, Vasily.
It is time to say good morning and good evening.
It is good evening for me. It is good morning for you. And welcome to the next episode of
Happy Maybe, a podcast to explain the secrets of happiness
or unhappiness. Honestly, it's the same thing.
one by one.
Vasily asked me if I want to introduce the topic straight into his face just before we started. And I think that I don't want to introduce it straight to your face. I want to, as I always do, tell you a little story and then you will see what I mean. Or maybe a question, actually. So I don't know about you, and I haven't discussed it with many people, but I had people in my life who I chose to never interact with again. Usually it is something that the person does that tells me that I don't want to ever talk to them again.
Okay.
And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad people. A lot of them are, good people. And in fact, I do want to talk later about the idea that bad people don't quite exist. And this particular story is about my trip that I had maybe about 7 years ago with my partner at the time and another couple. And we had a conflict literally in a car in the middle of a road trip in the middle of the desert. We had a conflict and the other person in the car was like very upset with us. And she said, if you don't like it, you can just get off the car and blah, blah, blah. Like she was angry at us. And I was like realizing that she's being emotional and this is completely unreasonable and we are in the middle of the desert. We don't really have anywhere to go. Neither of us knew how to drive. So her boyfriend was driving and I just had to stop talking about this, be quiet, be nice. And then I waited for a couple more days and then I never spoke with them again. And then sometimes I wonder if this is like the wise decision. We do talk about how in order to like the people you interact with define who you are. And I do have certain types of people that I choose as of late. I have started doing this that I choose to avoid interacting with in the future. Again, it doesn't mean that they're bad people. It's just that I don't think that I should be interacting with them. And then all at the same time, I do feel a little bit guilty when I do it because that seems like showing a sort of a weakness in me, right? Because if I'm choosing not to interact with them, well, that means I'm not strong enough, I guess, to do that. Let's start here. Is that something that you've done? Like, do you have people that you just stopped talking to and that you never spoke with again, and then you sometimes come back to this? But I wonder if you've had that experience yourself.
Yes. I can relate. It doesn't happen all the time, but it certainly had happened in my life. I think if we tie it to maintaining happiness, the happiness levels, it's probably us trying to do damage control. Like if there was a traumatic event related to certain people and they brought some negativity to our lives, we don't want this to repeat. However, you're bringing up a good point. Are we strong enough to deal with it? Because sometimes things can be fixed in conversation. You can be that person who shows them the light, it makes them a better friend for you by spotlighting certain things that they could do better. But then I'm full of contradictions about this because as you're talking about this, there's this like a clear path right away. Like, avoiding is not good or avoiding is great because you protect yourself and nobody has the right to infringe on your well-being. And I can fluctuate all day, like, is it worth it? Is it not? To try to remedy the situation? Is it just an easy way out? Just close the door, never come back? Or would it be a more noble way to say, like, listen, what happened last week or last month in the car? I understand where you're coming from, but also you have to check to see where I'm coming from and how I see it, and maybe we can do it differently next time, something like that. But these conversations are enduring. They can be draining. They can be misunderstood, misconstrued. Sometimes it's just easier to just drop it all together. Yeah, these are my thoughts.
I really like it how you're saying that it is inherently not one side is true, but yes, you can see the value in doing both. And I think there is value in, setting boundaries, for example. Everybody's talking about boundaries these days. It's such a big thing. Set your boundaries, so important. But all at the same time, I'll like say something like political discussions are very often the cause of misunderstanding and breakage in relationships. Americans, for example, during the general election, they would say that their Thanksgiving was like a war site because they would come to their parents who are most likely going to hold the opposite side of the political view, and then their Thanksgiving turns into an entire political discussion forever.
Or staying tight-lipped for the sake of peacefulness.
Yeah, either or. And then I I'm reflecting on how I have, I think I know people who chose to cut off entirely anyone who disagrees with them about certain topics, like very harshly and very actively, in fact, proactively removing anyone who's not on the same side as they are. And that seems like a strong, conscious, and righteous and good position. Why should I listen to them? I know exactly how things are. I know exactly what I believe in, and in all those other stupid people, they can go and do whatever the hell they want. When I was about 10 years ago, I read this article where they talked about the concept of echo chambers, and the echo chambers are especially interesting in the sense of like the internet, right? Because you're most likely to see the types of things that you're most likely to agree with. So there is no point in showing you something that you will skip over because, like, oh, those other people that I don't like, why are you showing me this? You're not going to click on it. You're not going to generate revenue. You're most likely to see exactly what you're about to agree with. And if you add to this, for example, removing everybody you disagree with, you're very likely to end up in a situation where you just don't see the opposite side at all.
No, I think being addicted to emotions come into play here as well. You may cut them off, but then how are you gonna feel that very seductive, addictive emotion that really makes you feel alive, in arguments, in outrage and stuff like that? I mean, people don't consciously choose to stick around people or to engage with people who make them feel this way, but it's more of a subconscious addiction. But I wanted to mention that sometimes it's warranted and a bit more clear-cut for me to cut off people from future conversations and future contacts. And I would call it, I would put these people in the category of diagnosable. Like, I can make a diagnosis, like I can make a conclusion about them. For example, if I detect that somebody is chronically psychopathic and their life sort of game is to harm other people, just it's in their nature. If I see that pattern, I think it's easier for me to make the decision. Okay, I'm going to cut off the psychopath or sociopath. I'm not going to give him any chances because I just see where it's going. Another type of person could be maybe something chronic whiner or chronic drinker, somebody who has this influence on me and drags me down from the lifestyle that I don't want to be a part of. So I think this sort of this way of guarding my happiness is justified for me. Like, I don't want to give people many chances if they just keep doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, it makes sense that there's definitely situations where it would make sense to stop talking to someone. And what I find very often to be true is that those people that I don't really want to interact with, or those people who you might describe as, trying to find a word, you would describe them as I don't know, you would describe them as bad people. I don't have a better word right now, but essentially the types of people that you wouldn't, if you had children, you wouldn't want the children to hang out with them. It's not necessarily that these people are quote unquote bad, right? Because what I find very often is that the most destructive behaviors are always accompanied by intellectual justification that this behavior is good, necessary, in fact, much needed. Did you find this yourself?
Justified by them or justified by you as you analyze their behavior?
No, usually the worst things are often done in the name of something good. So yes, they're justified by them.
Yeah, there's this expression, like, they don't mean bad, they just do the best they know at the time, something like that. Like, at the time, it's the best decision they can make. So every decision these bad people make looks bad from the outside, but to them, it's the only thing they can do because this is how, the life circumstances are for them. So, so you can't really judge them as harmful people who just want to bring negativity to other people's lives. I remember I cut off one friend who just kept kept on wanting to come hang out with me and drink, or he would bring some substances with him, but he would never be truly invited. I would tell him like, okay, yeah, let's discuss. Let's pick a day, Thursday or Friday, then a certain time, and then you come, and then we hang out. But please don't insist on seeing me earlier because I have stuff to do. And he would come after that call like an hour later and knock on my door, on my window, and be like, I was just too bored, and you told me to wait till Friday. I mean, I just want to see you now, because I know you're just sitting on your computer and you're not doing anything, so don't tell me you're busy or something like that. And he would just insist on it. It would go beyond any allowable boundaries, like knocking on my window at night. Come on, dude. Like, so that kept on happening, and I had to actively ignore him for years until he finally dropped the desire to contact me. Yeah.
That's crazy. That is insane. And I think that's a pretty good example. What I keep coming back to is, I think this particular, the example you're bringing up is the guy just being annoying. It's clearly annoying. And yes, he probably doesn't mean bad, right? But the experience you're having with him is strictly negative. And if you have the ability to, it would make sense to stop this experience from happening.
But in his mind, he's probably doing a friendly thing. I just care about you, so I want to hang out, something like that, right? So it can be sort of justified and understood, but damn.
Yeah, I think that's what I want to bring this to. The story comes to mind is some years ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I went on a date, just a random date from an app, and we were hanging out with this girl and talking, and she was telling me about how the world is a dangerous place and how anyone can like curse you, and she was cursed, and until these other people didn't lift the curse and stuff. It was weird, man, and I thought to myself that her description of the world, like the world that she lives in, is so significantly different from the world that I live in. Since then, in the last couple of years, I had more experiences where I meet someone who describes the world, like their perception of the world. They would usually say something like the world is full of bad people. They would see evil. They would see a lot of evil, and it would be very clear to them that they need to fight the evil. They would have like a very clear vision that if only they had the power, like literal physical power, they would fight the evil on evil terms and they would win. And that scares me. Like, these are the people that usually scare me the most because they sometimes seem like evil themselves. And every time I try to talk to this person, and it's not any specific person, I have in mind at least like 3 different individuals with whom I mostly no longer talk. When I try to talk back, explaining that I don't see the world this way, explaining that it's not something that I see really, they would usually say like, well, you don't know the world. They might say that I'm young. They might say I'm young, or I'm privileged.
Or worse, they can say you're part of the problem.
Yeah, that's a good point. Or you're part of the problem. Yeah.
And that's where I would agree with you. That's a good measure. It's a good line to not cross and be like, okay, well, we reached this point. If you're fighting evil, if you're wielding your sword, I may accidentally get hurt because you are very reckless with your actions. So I'd rather walk away and not accidentally become a part of the evil army that you're fighting. So yeah, so I think.
But also it is very likely, actually, what I noticed as a pattern, it is extremely likely with someone who sees the world as evil, it is extremely likely that you will actually become evil. And so, yeah, if there's anything in terms of self-preservation, I do see this as a viable option to attempt to create enough buffer with this distance, with these people. Because, hey, in terms of happiness, that's not very helpful. And at the same time, I do feel kind of guilty because I am, by distancing myself from them, it is a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? They just described to me how the world is this bad place, and I'm sort of doing more or less what they expected me to do.
And then you care enough about that person that you could help them in their fight, but you choose not to. because you don't want to be bothered. You don't want to diminish your happiness. So there's several sides to it, mainly two sides. Should I stay or should I go? And the truth is somewhere in the middle, as always. And my recommendation to anyone listening would be to not stick with one or the other method and just always evaluate the situation. Do you have the power to improve that your friends or your loved ones' life by talking to them, by being available, by being open, without losing much of yourself and without diminishing your energy, draining your energy so that you cannot perform basic life functions? If you can, go ahead and help. If you cannot, it's completely okay to minimize or completely cut off communication. That's how I see it.
To be fair, unfortunately, I think it's not always possible, right? We could be talking about like a family member who is suddenly really into this new conspiracy theory about something that you have no interest in, and you can't really cut them off because, well, they're your family. You're gonna keep seeing them, and at the same time, if I were to
or a child or parent, caretaker.
Since we seem to be giving advice, I don't know, but I try to understand people until the very end, when I realize that I have understood them properly and they have relatively little interest in understanding my point of view on the same question. So if they believe that the world is evil and I don't believe it, then I try to ask them about why is it evil? What parts of your life brought you to this conclusion? And then I try to present my point of view with my examples, but sometimes that just doesn't work.
Okay, yeah. With this, we're gonna finish this episode, and thank you, Nikita, for participating.
Thank you, Vasily, for being Vasily.
Till the next time.
Goodbye. Warning, I'm about to introduce topic straight into your face. That's actually funny.